Okay, so I'm finally back online. I had a bit of a blip the last week or so with a bad case of COVID, which knocked me out for a bit, but I'm on the mend finally. But as you can hear, my voice is still a little bit croaky from all the coughing, so please forgive me for that. Anyway, I thought I'd get back into the swing of things by consolidating everything we know about the potential for action camera releases in the spring. Specifically, I want to talk about what we might expect from both GoPro and Insta360. So, what do we know? Last year, Nick Woodman explained on a GoPro earnings call that the company would be diversifying products and making more staggered releases throughout 2026 and beyond. Now, reading between the lines, I believe that the new GP3 processor is ready, and using earlier earnings calls as a reference, I fully expect the HERO14 Black to be announced this spring. Now, I could always be wrong about this and we might end up with a traditional autumn release, but I think GoPro will want to keep the momentum going from the Max 2 and won't want to lose any more ground to DJI or Insta360. So I'm quietly confident that we'll see the HERO14 Black sooner rather than later. Now, I've delved into what I expect and what I don't expect the HERO14 to feature before. I'm still convinced that the HERO13 was supposed to feature the GP3 processor. Remember, the HERO13 ushered in a change of body design as well as a new battery system. Going on the information in previous earning calls, it did seem somewhat surprising that it didn't feature the GP3. That said, if it means that the chip has had more time to mature and become more reliable, then a delay is no bad thing. However, if this is the case and the HERO14 keeps the same body design as the 13, then I would expect the HERO14 to continue using the same lens as the existing camera at a time when the competition is offering wider angles with their standard lenses. On the plus side, it will mean that anyone who has invested in the lens mods will not have to purchase new ones all over again. My main concern with the introduction of the GP3 is that it turns out to be not ambitious enough in its power or scope. It absolutely has to be a 5nm process or lower. At the very least, we need to be expecting much longer battery life, less thermal issues, and importantly, fast charging. These three features are mandatory at a bare minimum to bring GoPro's Hero Black series in line with the competition. Likewise, other convenience features such as a front-facing touchscreen would also be useful to have. Audio is another area where GoPro is currently lacking, and I've mentioned on previous videos that the company really does need its own wireless mic solution. 16 kHz Bluetooth audio just doesn't cut it compared with Osmo Audio and Insta360's proprietary system. If GoPro isn't at least planning a wireless mic of its own, it would leave the Hero Black series as the only flagship action camera model without its own high-quality wireless audio option. With action cameras increasingly used as primary vlogging devices, it's an omission that freezes out a fairly significant and increasingly prevalent portion of the market. Now, the sensor in the HERO13 has been in use since the HERO11 back in 2022, and it really is showing its age. In fact, variations of the same sensor have been in use since the HERO9 in 2020, making the technology 6 years old or more by now. It's not just showing its limitations in size and resolution versus a competition, but also its functionality. For example, the current sensor isn't capable of pixel binning, which is one reason of many why the Hero series loses out on low light performance. But here's the rub. GoPro has traditionally always used Sony sensors, but currently there's no newer sensor that offers an 8:7 or 1:1 ratio that GoPro would require, outside of some specialist industrial sensors. And the knock-on effect of that is that if GoPro is going to fit a much newer and higher performance sensor into the HERO14 while retaining the square aspect ratio options, it will have needed to look elsewhere. That's no small feat because different manufacturers' sensors have very different looks. Moving to a new sensor would require a whole lot of new work to ensure that the colour science that GoPro is known for can be moved to the new chip without anyone noticing any major differences. Now, there are likely plenty of options out there beyond Sony IMX series, including commissioning a custom sensor design. Having said that, I believe that GoPro got its hands on the 8:7 sensor before it was released to public, so maybe there's a Sony sensor we don't know about yet. However GoPro has gone about obtaining a new sensor for the HERO14, if indeed it actually has, the fact is that the new camera desperately does need a newer, more up-to-date design to ensure it stands a good chance against the competition. It's not enough these days to focus on imagery in good light. Everybody from vloggers to mountain bikers ends up using action cameras in less than ideal conditions, and we now expect the cameras to keep up with users' demands. Because of this, I'm quietly confident that the HERO14 will finally use a new image sensor, and if it doesn't... Moving on from GoPro, spring is also traditionally the time when Insta360 announces a new Ace Pro. Okay, granted, there's only been 2 cameras so far, but spring certainly seems to be the favoured announcement time. We've recently had the X5, the X4 Air, and the new Link 2 Pro webcams, with the X Series 360 cameras generally getting their releases around late summer or autumn time. I think it's fair to expect an Ace Pro 3 announcement fairly soon, possibly around April. The big question is, of course, what can we possibly expect with a new camera? After all, the Ace Pro 2 is an incredibly powerful and capable device already. Given the speed at which Insta360 seems to be developing processing chips, I think it's reasonable to expect improvements there. Whether that's an entirely new chipset or a refined version of the existing one remains to be seen. But if there's one thing Insta360 has shown time and again, it's that it doesn't rest on its laurels when it comes to this particular aspect of camera design. Given how DJI has moved into the square aspect ratio space, I think that the Ace Pro 3 will also allow square aspect ratios to be chosen for a much taller field of view than the current 4x3 option. This will make the camera even more useful for POV, particularly combined with Insta360's ultra-wide lens module. If Insta360 makes this happen, no doubt it'll put its own twist on things. Given how past cameras have worked, it might well be that the Ace Pro 3 ends up using the same sensor as the Action 6. There's precedence for this, with the Ace Pro 2 using the same sensor as the Action 5 Pro. Another area that I expect Insta360 to improve upon is tonal range. Given the sheer number of creators who've moved over to the Ace Pro 2 and are into cutting footage with different cameras, I suspect that Insta360 might finally realise the demand for 10-bit colour for advanced users. Currently, while iLog is available in Insta360's cameras, it's completely nerfed by being crammed into 8-bit colour space, with the result of quantization being very apparent in the grade. Insta360 has long resisted added 10-bit colour to its cameras since it didn't see it as a priority for its user base. However, with more and more advanced users using the Ace Pro and other Insta360 devices, the time for 10-bit colour is long overdue. And I will quietly predict that the Ace Pro 3 will be the first Insta360 camera to feature it. And if it doesn't, well... As for other features that the Ace Pro 3 might have, it's fairly tricky to predict what else it might realistically gain. All I can say is that Insta360 is an imaginative company, so I've no doubt that it'll have some sort of curveball feature or two that we weren't expecting. Anyway, those are my consolidated thoughts about what I'm expecting this spring. Do you have any predictions of your own? And if you do, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you do like my content, please do like the video, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. And if you're feeling particularly generous, you can also buy me a coffee with a link in the description. Either way, your support means a lot and it allows me to continue making new content. I'm currently working on an advanced POV tutorial, though this bout of COVID has put me back somewhat, but it is coming soon. If you have any ideas for tutorials or specific content that you'd like to see here, again, let me know in the comments. Anyway, that's me done for now, and I'll catch you in the next video.